Hello, I'm Dr. Bruce Eisenberg. Welcome again to Back to Health. Today's a very special Back to Health. Back to Health is the longest running show on Staten Island Community Television. We've been around since the mid-1980s, and every now and then we have a very, very special show. Today's show, we're honoring my father, Dr. Marvin Eisenberg, who's been in practice 60 years now as a chiropractor here on Staten Island. We had him on 10 years ago to celebrate 50 years, and thank God, 10 years later, we have him back to discuss some very interesting insights. And my father is one of the pioneers of chiropractic in Staten Island and in New York State. Has some very interesting insights that I think everyone can benefit from, understanding how healthcare has changed, how the chiropractic profession has evolved, and how just life in general is different over the years. My father has been in practice 60 years now. He graduated at New York Institute of Chiropractic back in 1951, August of 1951. And it's a pleasure and honor to have him with us today. My father, Dr. Marvin Eisenberg. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being here.
It's always a pleasure having you. And 10 years ago, we celebrated 50 years in practice. 10 years later, it's a pleasure to have you back in.
It feels like yesterday.
Doesn't it? Time goes quickly. Time really goes quickly. And you still see patients every day. And let me ask you, there are people that, I just heard of a friend of mine, a chiropractor, retired after 25 years in practice. And you see, people that in various careers, can't wait till they retire. After 60 years in practice, what motivates or inspires you to go to the office every day, to still see patients, and to share in your knowledge and expertise?
It's really the satisfaction and the gratification of getting sick people well. Each day is a new challenge. I don't get bored. I love what I'm doing. I'm not too happy with managed care and the other restrictions that we have, but I still love my science and I still love people, and I enjoy getting people well.
That's great. One of the greatest blessings in life is if you love what you do for a living.
Absolutely.
There's a saying, do what you love, you never have to work a day in your life. Mark Twain said, make your vocation your vacation. And it's true, when you love what you do, it's a pleasure. You go to work happy every day. And we deal with insurance companies, we fight with insurance companies, we deal with managed care. So there's always a downside of everything. But if you love what you do, you take the bad with the good.
So true.
And
I try to separate the two.
Yeah.
The administration, all the restrictions that we have, and the satisfaction of getting sick people well.
And nothing's better than that.
Absolutely.
When I teach my students at the College of Staten Island, these are all students going into healthcare careers, and I try to make them aware of how wonderful, how rewarding it is to help sick people get well, to dedicate your life to helping sick people get well. It's a lot of responsibility. When you go in the room with a patient, they have to get 100% attention. You cannot ever compromise a patient's care. So it's an awesome responsibility. But the rewards are so great to know that you have an impact on people's lives.
When I was on the Chiropractic State Board of Examiners, I always told each candidate for licensure to think of each individual who comes to your office, each patient, as a member of your immediate family. And how would you treat your mother, your father, your sister, your brother? And that's the way you should treat each patient. If you do that, you'll always be busy, you'll never have to advertise, and you'll get great satisfaction every day of your practice.
Right. That's one of the many things you did in the chiropractic profession, serving on the Board of Examiners, which is involved with licensing the new practitioners. Mm-hmm. You've been president of the New York State Chiropractic Association, Staten Island District. You've been on the Council of Nutrition of the American Chiropractic Association. You've been really one of the pioneers in chiropractic, and it's wonderful when you look back at all that you've accomplished.
I've enjoyed every moment of it.
Mm-hmm. That's
really
great. That's great. And that important message in terms of treating patients like members of your family. I've walked outside a treatment room when you have a patient there. I'll hear you telling jokes with them, and sometimes I hear you scolding them like a loving father would scold a child.
It's all part of it.
Yeah,
it's done with love.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's, again, treating patients like family. And this is something I discuss with my classes also. Never keep people waiting 3 hours in a waiting room. Never condescend to them. Mm-hmm. Never make a patient feel like they're not allowed to ask a question. Treat patients the way you want your family members to be treated. That's what you taught
Absolutely.
Me. That's what I taught students. That's what you taught the new practitioners. And it's such an important message. And sometimes it's lost among healthcare providers today.
I encourage patients to ask questions. I like them to be part of their getting well, part of the treatment. And I always tell them, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call me or to write them down. When you come in next time, ask the questions.
That's great. That's another thing
Some doctors resent this I-like questions.
Absolutely. And that's another thing I discuss with my students and with my patients. If the patient is made aware of what's going on, they can be a partner in their own health care.
Absolutely.
And they will benefit from that. Some patients really want to get actively involved in their health care, some don't. But it's our responsibility to make them aware of things that they can do to participate in their health care, whether it's nutritional, and you've been a member of the Council on Nutrition, that's one of the big things that you've always been involved with, whether nutritional, whether it's what we call the activities of daily living, how to bend, how to lift, how to sleep, whether it's learning to control stress. But if the patient can become aware of what's going on and how they can help contribute to their well-being, the patient will be better off for it. And as a healthcare provider, that's a big part of the job.
No question about it.
And very often, we want patients to do exercise when it comes to rehabilitating, and some will participate, some will not. But it's our responsibility to make them aware of it.
Everything else in life.
Absolutely. Now, how were you first introduced to chiropractic? Back when you went to chiropractic, it was not licensed in New York. New York was one of the last states to license chiropractic. How were you introduced to the chiropractic field?
The original chiropractor in my family was my uncle, was really one of the pioneers. He practiced in the early 40s and 50s. He was a very religious man, and he loved his profession, and he was like a mentor to me. And because of him, I was first introduced to chiropractic. And my family was always, they were always interested in health and natural healing. Mm-hmm. As a child, my mother always took me for chiropractic treatments. It wasn't like today, going into a car or walking. We took 2 buses in the East Bronx to get to the chiropractor. But we did every week, every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And I think I enjoyed good health because of those early treatments by my chiropractor.
And I remember your uncle, Dr. Joseph Rosen. I remember him well from many years ago, and he was the first chiropractor in the family.
That's right. That's right.
And he was really a pioneer in natural health. He had a health food store. He made his own health food products.
Yes, he did.
Indeed. Brilliant man. Now, so you brought up you were exposed to chiropractic. You benefited from chiropractic care. What made you decide to become a doctor of chiropractic at that time?
Realizing the benefits of chiropractic, I wanted to be the one to administer this wonderful science to people. When I first started, chiropractic was really in its infancy. May was 50 years old. Chiropractic was first started in 1896, so it's a little over 100 years old, and I was in chiropractic school in the early 50s. And I was looking forward to being one of the chiropractors who was involved with legislation in New York. We went to Albany. We had all the legislators in Staten Island on our team, Senator Markey, Assemblyman Russo, Assemblyman Amon, and they were all completely in our corner. And then there was what we call an administrative bill proposed by Governor Rockefeller at that time. And it passed both houses unanimously. And then we took our state boards, we became licensed doctors. Chiropractic is licensed, as you know, in every state of the United States, recognized by the government, insurance companies, Medicare, workers' comp. We worked for this, but it was worth the effort.
A lot of the chiropractors of today and the chiropractic patient of today don't realize what the fights, the battles that you pioneers had to go through. These days we have medical physicians that are patients in our office, that refer patients to our office. When you first went into practice, that wasn't very common. The medical lobby fought the licensure of chiropractic, and one of the real problems with that is that until you license a profession, you can't control it. So once you license chiropractic, you know that anybody that practices chiropractic is a doctor of chiropractic who graduated an accredited chiropractic college, and not just someone that puts up a shingle. And until you license it, you can't really control it. And you were there back in the 1960s. I know you were in Albany with a whole group of chiropractors from Staten Island that were in there, making that battle possible. And we have insurance equality and the various things that you talked about. And again, patients take it for granted today. Young chiropractors take it for granted today. You can take any of that for granted. You had to go and fight for all that.
Absolutely.
Now,
anything that's good is worth fighting for.
Absolutely.
And that's the way we felt. What we told the people, and it's so true, that you don't have to go to a chiropractor. But if you do decide to go to adoptive chiropractic, you should go to somebody who's licensed, who takes state boards, the same as physicians and dentists and all the other healing arts. And the legislators realized that we were sincere in our motivation, and the governor was very cooperative. And as I said, this was an administrative bill. The bill passed both houses in New York unanimously. There wasn't a single vote against chiropractic.
It was really
quite accomplishment.
It was a great accomplishment. It was long overdue.
Yes.
And I remember as a child when you were in Albany and fighting for that. Now, before you opened up your office here on Staten Island, you served in the Army Medical Corps, U.S. Army Medical Corps.
Yes.
And any interesting stories you can share as a chiropractor in the Medical Corps at that time?
Well, I want to say first that during the Korean conflict, there was a draft. They were drafting into the Army or to the Marines. And I realized that the Marines do not have a medical corps. They use Navy personnel. So what I did was I wanted to make sure to get into the medical corps, and so I enlisted in the Army. And I served at two of the main hospitals, Fort Meade Army Hospital and the Fort Monroe Army Hospital. And it was very interesting. I ran a dispensary at Fort Meade, a one-man dispensary. Took the ambulance in the morning, went out to the field, brought in the sick call patients to our clinic, prescribed medications where I felt was indicated, or sometimes I gave them chiropractic treatments, and then brought them back to their field. And it was great, and I did this for about 6 months. One-man dispensary, and we did very well.
And the patients got the extra benefit of having chiropractic care, which was not part of the routine at that time.
That's certainly true. And I have to say that we did get results with chiropractic where medications didn't succeed.
So then you opened up here on Staten Island. You've been here on Staten Island for many, many years now. Now, over the years in practice, what changes have you seen specifically in chiropractic care over the years?
We have what's called, in chiropractic, continuing education. We have that, and we really, it may be a nuisance sometimes, but I feel that's very necessary. We have seminars in chiropractic where we learn new techniques, new ideas in the profession, and it's not a stagnating profession. We're constantly moving ahead, new ideas, and the scope of practice includes not just chiropractic treatments, but as you pointed out, nutrition, exercise. This is all part of getting well.
And the point you make about continuing education, that's so very important. You know, now it's required by law, but for many years it wasn't. But the bottom line is that as a healthcare provider, you want to keep up with the new things. So it should not be required. It should not be necessary to be required.
We look forward to it.
Yeah, but it's an important thing because we have information that we didn't have years ago. When I first went into practice, MRI didn't exist yet. A CAT scan was a hot new thing. MRI didn't exist. Electrodiagnostics were in their infancy. So it's a matter of you have to keep up on the new information doing continuing education. Also in terms of the chiropractic techniques, well, you have the traditional hands-on adjustments, and chiropractic means done by hand, and the hands-on adjustment are still a very important part of chiropractic. But we also have the modern non-force adjustments. So if someone has very brittle bones like with osteoporosis, chiropractic can be made available to them without any compromise of the effectiveness because of the non-force adjustments. And on our scope of practice, other things you mentioned, nutrition, rehab exercises, physical therapy type techniques. So a lot of things that we can do in order to help our patients. And so it's important to always be aware of the new things, the new changes. And you're right, it's constantly changing. There's an old saying, the only thing constant in life is change.
That's it.
And it's a matter of keeping up with all the new information. And through continuing education, and again, it's required by law, but even if it wasn't required, we always went on seminars and to keep up with all the new information. Okay, now, going outside of chiropractic, Chiropractic, doesn't function in a vacuum. We interact with other healthcare providers and with attorneys and with insurance companies. And as I mentioned before, we have a good rapport with a lot of the medical physicians that refer patients to our office,
Yes, they
or
do.
attorneys that will have us testify as expert witnesses. But outside of just chiropractic and healthcare in general, what positive changes have you seen over the years?
Well, as you pointed out, all the new diagnostic tests that are available to the physician and to the chiropractor, MRIs, X-rays, different chiropractic instruments that we utilize. This is all new and is being advanced on a regular basis. And we keep abreast of these things by attending these seminars and attending continuing education, always looking to give better care to our patients.
That's a priority.
That's the goal.
That's a priority, to give better care to our patients. And I always tell my students, and you've always taught me this, that number one priority is the well-being of our patients. Everything else is secondary to that. And the technology in the world of healthcare is improved so dramatically, so fast over the years, that what was true at one time is no longer true. The things that we thought were true years ago, we have a better understanding. Very often in my classes, I joke about the idea that we have body parts today that we didn't have back when I was in school. But what is actually true, there are structures in a cell that because of improved microscopy, we can see today that we weren't able to see, we really didn't understand back when I was in school. So the technology advances so rapidly that it's a wonderful thing to be in healthcare in an era where people that are alive that would not have been alive a few generations ago, where people that would have been in pain are no longer in pain. And as doctors of chiropractic, we have a natural approach, but we still incorporate all the modern technology with it. And it's really the best of all worlds. And if a patient needs medical care, we don't hesitate. The last thing we want is a patient in our office that's not a chiropractic
Patient's
patient.
welfare is most important.
Exactly. So, if a patient needs medical care, we refer them to a medical doctor. But the idea of being able to bring natural health care to our patients and using all the modern diagnostic technology can really be the best of all worlds to our patients.
As you know, chiropractic had a very humble beginning with D.D. Palmer being a faith healer in an office in Davenport, Iowa in 1895. And there was a black janitor in the building by the name of Harvey Lilliard, who, because of trauma, suddenly became deaf. And he walked into D.D. Palmer's office and he asked, "Can you help me in any way? You're a faith healer." So he said, "Well, lie down on this table. Let me see if I could do something." And he didn't really know what he was doing, but he discovered chiropractic. He palpated his spine, found a vertebra way out of alignment, and he figured, well, it doesn't feel right. It was different than the one above and the one below, and so he did a little manipulation, and he did the first chiropractic thrust, and the patient's hearing was restored. Then went to the textbooks and he studied, and he realized what he was doing. He studied his anatomy, studied the spinal structure, and he had other people coming to his office, and he was getting them well. And he figured, this is great. He's going to keep in the family. And then he decided that's not good. He decided to start the first chiropractic school in Davenport, Iowa. And his son was his first student. Mm-hmm. And those are the humble beginnings of chiropractic.
Right. And what's very interesting is that back in 1895, when he made his discovery, as a magnetic healer, he really didn't know, but he found this bump and he thrust into place. But as he did his studying and he learned anatomy and physiology to understand what he was doing, also historically he realized that in ancient times there was the laying on of hands and walking on spines, which were very, very crude versions of the same thing. And what he took credit for not for actually discovering, because he realized this was done in the past, but he was the first one to use the spinous processes and this transverse processes as the levers. And so, right from those very humble beginnings, he looked in both directions. He looked into the past to realize that the ancient forms of this procedure, and he studied modern information of that time, anatomy and physiology, and he looked to the future in terms of establishing a school to teach his new technique.
That's very true. Very humble beginnings.
And the Palmer College still exists today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, while there have been some wonderful positive changes in healthcare, there have been some negatives also. What negative changes have you seen in healthcare?
Really, the most negative change that I can think of is the fact that we have managed care. We have individuals in these insurance companies who determine which patients need further care, which patients cannot get further care, and they go by the parameters. No one is more suited to decide whether a patient needs further chiropractic care than a doctor of chiropractic himself. And hoping in the future that this will be the case and not have some young teenager, as I found out in one of the insurance companies, making that determination. As a matter of fact, I called her and I said, how can you say this patient needs 6 treatments for a sciatic neuralgia? And she said, well, we go by parameters and we have a listing for each condition and what the patient needs. Each patient is different and we respect that difference in the patient. And we get the patient well. Even if the patient can't afford to continue chiropractic, we try to get together with the patient and sometimes even adjust our fees to get the patient well. That's most important.
The most important thing is the well-being of the patient. And it's true that some of the managed care organizations, they're no longer concerned with the well-being of the patient, and they have parameters that are not based on that patient. And you can't fit everyone in the same mold. And as healthcare providers, you can never think of your patients as all being the same. And it's unfortunate that sometimes we're battling with these companies in order to fight for the rights of our patients. But that's what the reality is, unfortunately, sometimes. Now, what are some of the highlights of your career in chiropractic?
Really, the highlight, I would say, was the decade between 1960, around 60, 65, where we went to Albany to put our case before the legislature. And when chiropractic finally passed, overwhelmingly New York State became a licensed state, and all the insurance companies, New York became a state with insurance equality, where every patient was entitled to chiropractic care. And to be able to put out a sign, licensed doctors of chiropractic, and have the patient know that he's going to somebody who has been tested by in anatomy and physiology and all the basic sciences, and he's qualified to treat patients. Mm-hmm. That was a great satisfaction.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that every day of the week when you help sick people get well, that it's constantly thrilling, highlights all the time. I know that one of the things that I see and that you've seen is we have patients, then you have the patient's children and grandchildren.
As you know, I'm treating a third-generation family. Mm-hmm. I treated the grandparents. I've treated the children who are now approximately 40 years old. You've seen them in the office. Mm-hmm. And now their children who are in college. Mm-hmm. And it's nice to see a third generation coming for chiropractic care from New Jersey. Mm-hmm. They travel quite a bit.
Right, they'll travel any distance. People, when they have confidence in you, they'll travel any distance for the care. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, it is.
And it's one of the things we see every day of the week, patients coming in and referring other patients, which is the highest compliment they can pay. And when they bring their family, their loved ones in for care, it's really a wonderful thing. Now, I have a little, you don't know about this, I have a couple little presentations to make.
Oh.
This is from the American Chiropractic Association. And
what a
with greatest
surprise.
Mm-hmm, and I kept it hidden from you.
Yes, you
with
did.
Greatest appreciation presented to Marvin Eisenberg, D.C., FACC, that's Phil, American College of Chiropractors, in honor of 60 years of faithful service to patients and the community and a recognition of his devotion to the chiropractic profession. This is a beautiful certificate from the American Chiropractic Association.
I'm very appreciative and very grateful.
We'll try to find the wall space for it.
Thank you.
Okay. And we have one more over here. And this is from our councilwoman, Debbie Rose. And I'll read this one also. The City Council citation. Whereas a great city is only as great as those persons who give exemplary service to their communities, whether through participation in voluntary programs, through unique personal achievement in their professional or other endeavors, or simply through a lifetime of good citizenry. And whereas such service, which is truly the lifeblood of the community and the city, so often goes unrecognized and unrewarded, now, therefore, be it resolved that as a duly elected member of the New York City Council, we recognize that in Dr. Marvin Eisenberg, congratulations, 60 years of chiropractic medicine. We have an outstanding citizen, one which is worthy of esteem of both community and the great city of New York. So a very beautiful certificate from the council.
These are pleasant surprises. I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to our God above for giving me these 60 years and giving me a wonderful family. My wonderful wife, my dear children, my grandchildren. I'm very grateful, especially at this time of the year when we usher in a new year.
You know, very often when people talk about, when you're going to retire, that kind of thing, and what I always say is that if you love what you do and God gives you the strength, why would you retire?
You're absolutely right.
How do you feel when people ask you that?
I tell them, ask me again in about 10 years. I'll let you know.
As a matter of fact, 10 years ago, we had you on the show to celebrate 50 years in practice. It was very interesting. I asked you at that point about how you felt when I decided to go into chiropractic. And it was interesting because we see each other every day, but we never discussed that. We never really talked about that.
So true.
And we talked about it on the show that day. And I remember a number of patients of ours that watched it said, that's interesting. You never really spoke about that. So that was 10 years ago when we celebrated 50 years of your practice. Now, 10 years later, 60 years in practice. I want a commitment from you. 10 years from now, when we celebrate 70 years of practice, you'll be here.
With the help of God, from your mouth to God's ears. Thank you.
We'll talk to our crew. People make sure they're all ready for that show 10 years from now. Now, just before we close, we have less than a minute. Just tell us real quickly, young people looking for a career in healthcare, what would you advise them?
I would advise anyone looking for a career in health to consider chiropractic. I think it's the most wonderful healing art in the world. We serve people every day. We get good results, but you have to love chiropractic, you have to love people, and you have to dedicate yourself to the science.
That's the most important message, absolutely. Whatever career you choose, especially if it's a career in healthcare, you have to love what you do, you have to love people, and it can be the most rewarding thing in the world, whether you're choosing chiropractic or some other profession. And chiropractic is so rewarding that you're helping people naturally, and you really have an impact on people's lives, and there can be nothing better than that. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining us today on Back to Health.
Thank you
appreciate
for this opportunity, and hope to be back in 10 years.
Absolutely. Thank all of you for joining us on Back to Health. We'll see you again real soon. In the meantime, please stay healthy.